Hey, it's KRD&D Homebrew, and one of the joys and chores of running a homebrew campaign is that you've got to come up with everything. You've got to create the entire world that your players move through and interact, and you got to describe it for them. Right? It's not like it's an adventure path or module or one shot or whatever where everything is in a book and you can just read it. Right? You've got to describe this. Monsters, they'll have in a monster manual what they look like, smell, taste, whatever they feel like. Unless, of course, you're homebrewing, which is really fun. But the world itself, you've got to come up with those descriptions. And that, as I said, can be a chore, but it's also really fun. And when you start to GM and the players begin to ask you questions about the world, you start to realize that's a lot of work. Because they do. They want to look around and see what's going on in these places. What are the people like? What are their expressions? All that kind of stuff. And when I started this project, I went through and I looked at some of the first modules, Keeping the Borderlands and Slave Pits, the Undercity. Some of the later 80s where the box text got bigger and bigger as it went along, which gave us, when we first started, an idea of how you were supposed to describe the world. And I went up to, I think I looked at Storm King's Thunder and how they went about describing this. And I realized this is kind of a larger project than what I want to do for this. I just want to talk about it as opposed to some kind of historical recap. Plus, there's so much out there. It isn't just D&D. There's other systems. So I kind of gave up on that. But when I'm thinking about describing the world, I think about the passive description of the world that is when the players enter it, and then the active description of when the players begin to interact with your world. So I'm going to use an example. This is just a classic example to talk about this. The players have been either tasked or found out, or for some reason, they have information that a group of bandits is operating in some area, and they go to a town that's near there to investigate. And they've been told, or have clues or whatever, this tavern keep. She might know something about these bandits. So when they go into the town, what kind of, is it a large town? Is it a small town? Is it a huge city? Are there many, many taverns, or is it the only tavern in town? Does everybody know each other, or is it a bustling metropolis where people don't know each other? So when you're describing this and you're setting this up, so let's say we decide it's bandits, right? When we're setting up the so-called passive description, there's actually some active stuff of where would the bandits hide out? What would they use as a base of operations, as a city to fence things? Probably wouldn't be the only place in town, unless they run the town. So that's one option. But let's say that they want to fence stuff potentially through this tavern. And so you have a town where you might have an area on the wharf, docks and stuff, and then you have an area up. It's not quite a city, but it's not a village, it's a town. And you think they may have chosen this, or they may operate out of this tavern. So the players go, and then what's the tavern like? If it's along the docks, is it some seedy, grimy, everybody there looks like a criminal and whatnot? Or is it surprisingly well kept up? It's actually quite nice for this area. Or something in between. But those are what you're thinking about when you're going to describe the tavern and the area around it for the players. Is it kind of incongruous? It's all this area of, dock workers and tumble down buildings, or, people don't care about their environment. And here's this really nice tavern right in the middle of that. Now that might be a ding, ding, ding to me that something's up. Why is it so well kept up? But of course, it may not be because, let's just say the tavern, she has nothing to do with this place. She started this place, she bought it, and she wanted it to be improved. She had been a sailor. She knew what these dive bars were like on wharves, and she was going to have a good meal and a nice mug of ale and a clean environment. That's it. Or she's the mastermind of an operation, and she refuses to have a sleazy operation, and she runs a tight ship. It's a clean, safe place where she can conduct her business. Or something in between, right? The point is that you say that when you say it's actually quite a nice place, very neat. It's clean. It's been well painted on the exterior. The interior is kind of a cheerful environment. It's well lit. It's not one of these dusky, with the smoke everywhere and you can barely see your hand in front of your face. You better watch out for the rats and stuff. No. It's well kept. So let's just say we have that. Because again, it's passive in the sense of it's just the way it is, but it's active in terms of the operations of the NPCs. All right, so now the players, they've gone to this area and you've described it as a typical wharf type area. There are, workers, dock workers and sailors and stuff. It's not highfalutin. It's not, there's a few rich merchants and maybe they run an office, but they probably have their underlings down on the docks and they're up on the high hill in the nice area with a breeze and everything. And so you've just described this, and you might just say it's typical. Because again, what I would tend to do as a player, I might say, is there anything unusual that I see here? Now that's a tricky question, but I'm being active. I'm looking around and seeing if I see anything. And here's the thing about descriptions. When you point something out, when you say, well, there's an acrobat over there performing tricks for a few people, and they're throwing out little pennies or copper pieces, the players might go over there and start thinking that's significant. Anything you direct to their attention is potentially something that they think might be a storyline. So you could say there's an acrobat over there performing for copper pieces. It just seems ordinary. That doesn't seem to be anything. There's a preacher on the corner, proselytizing, trying to help the lost souls of the wharf. Okay. Is there anything unusual? And they'll say this. And now we get into the active part of systems where you have to roll. Let's say that it's a cult figure who's down in the docks, proselytizing, and he has his operatives, but he's also keeping an eye on something. Maybe he's in on the bandit thing or something. Again, my mind starts to go, but would the players know? So if you say he's, covered with weird tattoos and he has a wild expression, and when he looks at you, I'm making a secret roll. You don't see this, but there's something about his eyes that are strange. Well, instantly they're going to key in on that. But is that what the cult leader wants? Or does he want to, so he may have to make a deception check against their investigation or perception or whatever your system is, and then you gauge that reaction, what they see, off of what they roll, and you roll, or however you do it in your system. And let's say that this person has a tremendous deception and the player's not particularly good roll. You just say, he seems just like a very earnest, guy. And he sees you looking at them. Come, brother, hear the word. And he's just going to give them his spiel because he's beaten them. And when they look, he seems earnest. He seems to be a true believer in this cause. Nothing untoward. As opposed to, they make the check and you say, he's doing this. You can tell. Now, here's the description. He's giving this speech to these dock workers, but his eye is on that tavern. He's watching that, or his eye has been on you, right? And it can be things like, he's got his hand in his cloak while he's doing this. What does that mean? Because he's got some item or some ring that he's operating of, all these kind of things, because they made a really good perception check. So that description becomes part of that's active. They are actively trying to investigate. And that's reflected in that. So the passive description is whether or not he's covered in tattoos or just looks like a normal person. He's old or young, that kind of thing. And the active is, how does he react when the players investigate him? He realizes they're checking him out. Especially if they're just, when someone's looking at you, especially if you're up to no good, right? You can tell when people do that. They act a certain way. So the players go into this tavern, they notice that it's really well kept up, or, if you have a criminal mastermind, they don't want people to know that. It appears to just be a dive bar, a hovel. Just people lying on benches, passed out. Again, that's from their decision to create this passive atmosphere. And the players go in and they start talking to this barkeep, tavern keep, about these bandits. Now, if she's first of all, she may just say, I don't know anything about that. I don't know what you're talking about. And really not know. And they make a check and they think, now let's say they fail it miserably. Do you say, this is these tricky things. Oh, she's up to something, even though you failed it. Now they're going to go down on a blind alley here. Because you've said, you think they're suspicious. Because the way some of these systems work, if you roll a 1 or something, you get the opposite of what's really the case. So you got to be careful, though, because you don't want to waste their time too much. So you could just say a fail is if there's any deception here, you don't know what it is. She seems to not know anything. That's the way I would tend to do that. I don't like the whole blind alley. It turns into trouble. We only have a limited amount of time. So let's say that she doesn't know anything. She knows something, but she's afraid. She has nothing to do with the bandits. Or she's involved with the bandits. And then what level is that? So you got three things. And the players are asking her questions. Now, if she doesn't know anything, she not only might say, I don't know anything about that, but I don't have time to talk to you guys. You going to buy something or what? Because what is her personality, right? You got to decide that. She has a bar on a wharf. I think she might be pretty tough. And you represent that in her description. She's about 6 feet tall. She's got a blackjack behind the bar. She can use it. And she's got her brother or husband or whoever around. There's someone sitting there that's clearly a bouncer. And there's one at the door. Because this is a rough bar. And they're eyeing the players. So you give that description of her. She looks like she could handle herself in a fight. That's pretty impressive. Or she's a kindly little old lady, right? Who's running this bar, and everyone loves her, even all the roughs. If you even touch her, the ruffians will attack you. She's the saint of the wharf. These are the descriptors you're using this passive. This is who she is. You've made this decision. Now, in either case, whether it's a big, tough woman or the kindly old lady, she could still be running the entire bandits network, right? Which would be kind of cool. Or she could have nothing to do with it, or she could be under threat from them. Because even if she's tough and burly, she knows, I gotta want to have this bar. I just don't look at things that are happening out there. I just ignore it. Whatever's going on, I don't care. As opposed to, not only she knows about it and she's under threat. If you say anything about our operation, we're going to run out of the back. And if you say anything, you're dead. Okay. Or actually runs the whole operation. So the players are investigating this. They're asking her questions. However they get at it, that's up to them. If you come right up to someone before you even order a drink, you know about these bandits? They're just going to be like, what do you want something to drink? I don't know anything about, but get out of here. Or whatever they're going to react to that. Now, maybe they make a persuasion roll or some kind of diplomacy check. You know, depending on your system. It's tricky because I always, when people say, I want to do a performance check, I say, or persuasion or something. What do you say? What do you do? I'm not trying to make you, like, if you're not good at social encounters and I just want to roll, my character class has a really good persuasion or something. Well, I just want to hear what you're doing. I want you to be involved in the world. I want you to be active. Then I'm going to describe their reaction. And that description isn't just going to be, when you ask her about the bandits, she says, I don't know. She has a physical reaction on her face. Depending on if you use a rolling system, either did you really roll well? She says nothing, but she's looking away. There's something maybe she knows. It's hard to say, but there might be something there by the way she puts her hands, she's wringing her hands a little bit. So that's a clue that something's up. It could be just the fact that she knows bandits are out there and they're tough guys and she shouldn't say anything, or they're holding her son hostage, or something in between. They're going to burn her place down if she says anything. Okay. You're going to start grilling her? You're going to take her out back, the little old lady, no, you're going to, but something's up. So how do you get farther in? And that may be as far, I'm busy if you want to drink, or else they know something's up. And then they're going to look around the bar and they see her bouncer person who's now eyeing you. It's her brother. And again, what's the descriptor on her brother? He's an old sea dog that's old now, and he can't sail anymore, and his hands are all gnarled. He can't do the ropes and everything, tie knots, so he can't work on a ship. So now he's in this bar as his sister's protector. And he's watching you. And he may say, get out of here. I don't want your kind around here, because he's harassing the sister who he knows could be in trouble from these bandits. So you see, he's angry about this because the players are asking questions, too many questions. But there's nothing sinister about them necessarily. Or she's, in fact, either actively helping the bandits, or she's the bandit queen or something. Now there, I would say she would have a very good deception check. Because this is the thing. A lot of these things have these opposed checks. So you're investigating, you're trying to sense motive and deception and everything. And she's trying to put up a fake thing. And she might just kill you and appear as a little old lady. And the brother that might be a little less, he might be a little less skilled, but he might be schooled by her into just acting like, she's just a nice old lady. And we don't take, we just let everyone in here. We don't object to anything that's going on as long as it doesn't interfere with our business, that kind of thing. And you're totally sold on it. Well, if you find out she's the bandit queen later, players are not necessarily going to go, that was a total screw job because she seemed like a little old lady. Yes, she did. That's why she's the bandit queen, because she can maintain that persona. And my descriptions of her, it's almost too perfect, little old lady. Like she's got little doilies on the bar or something. Again, those are the descriptions. Those are the passive ones that you're thinking about if she's bandit queen that wants to maintain this facade of kindly old lady. That's what you're going for. And then when it's active, when the players are interacting, you're thinking about how she would do this. And you're thinking about physical clues as opposed to just what she says. And this is the thing, this is the, we're not professional writers, most of us, right? We're not experts at creating worlds and describing them. We have to just think about this. So we just have to think about always, well, what happens when someone is lying? Or what happens when someone becomes angry or when they're afraid? What does that do? And then what is that life of living on the wharf and running a tavern, what does that do to you physically? And how is it represented? How is the life worn them? So I think you think about those things, that passive description and active, and then you're constantly trying your best, because, it's hard to do. It's not an easy thing, describing a world. But you're trying to make it interesting, and you're remembering that every time you say something about someone, if you say, there's someone in the corner, kind of half shit like the Strider from the Prancing Pony and Lord of the Rings, they're going to be investigating. Well, it turns out it's just some guy having a beer. Okay, you can do that. But if you're continually doing it, again, it's good to have things that are just nothing. My old line about when they would search rooms, and after a while I'd say, you find nothing of any interest here. And that meant we're just going to move on. We're not going to continue to try to. We're not going to just keep doing this because there's nothing there. I'm telling you that as a GM. But again, you want to sprinkle stuff in, you flavor and different things, because that's what makes the game fun. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that, and a shout out to my Patreon supporters. This week, I continued with my Pocket Dimension. I have the Fractal Masters, which is a class of these thought priests, which was really fun. I'd love to hear your comments on descriptions, how you handle them, what you think about them. And again, like and subscribe and all that stuff. But the most important thing, my friends, as always, is to keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.